I'm going to remind our audience, though, that as this is happening, it is put Israel on a defensive posture that's required calling up 360,000 reservists. That is not a situation that's tenable for Israel's economy in the long term, because it puts so many people out of the workforce and out of essential jobs and putting them on a defensive posture waiting for a war to happen in the north. This has required volunteers to come from around the world to help with just about many different aspects of Israeli life. Now, one of those is sitting with us in studio right now, Gamaroff, a volunteer that came from Australia. I want to understand, the first thing that you did was attempt to start bringing in supplies, but then you expanded your activities from there.
Thank you for having me. Yes. So what happened was I saw the war occurring. I watched I-24 News, and I found that I was in a position where I wanted to bring stuff. There were people in Israel who asked me to bring some stuff to them. So I started buying that for my family. Then I went to try to take it on the plane, and they were asking for about $1,000 per suitcase, which was quite a lot. So what I did was I also volunteered for an organization called Jewish Care, where we look after elderly people. And what I did was I spoke to them, and they said, well, why don't you contact Operation Golda? So I said, what is Operation Golda? Anyway, I got their particulars, and they said to me, well, we've got some stuff to take as well. So they gave me a consignment, and I said, I can take more. I'll take 2. So I had my consignment I was taking, plus the 2 consignments, and I came to Tel Aviv. Had it delivered to a person over here, and I've still got one which I've got to give over to somebody. Now, that person, and I don't want to mention the name, but has a son who's either missing or in Gaza. So it's a difficult situation. So I want to be able to help as much as I can. I'm here to volunteer. I went to Kibbutz Be'eri, and that was a fantastic experience, and I want to be able to do as much as I can over here.
Now, from what I understand, you're not just bringing in parcels to people in need, you're also helping, from what I've seen just in pictures, helping pick crops. Right now there's a shortage of farmers because so many were killed or abducted in Israel's south. Talk us through some of the other developments on the ground that volunteers are doing out there.
Well, look, I think one of the primary things is helping on the farms, but also it is making sandwiches. Another very important thing is actually speaking to people, saying, look, I'm from Australia, we support you. The amount of people back home in Australia, Australia's got a very, very good Jewish community. Fantastic. You know, the fundraising, the, you know, dealing with social media. Before I got here, I actually had to have root canal work done. And so I couldn't leave straight away. So what I did was I got into social media, and I was on LinkedIn, and I spent a lot of time there. And I think that's a very, very important aspect of this war, is to be able to combat the bad narrative. And that actually gave me, you know, quite an insight into what was happening. And in fact, if I go back a step further, when it happened, I'm a consultant, I'm a management consultant, and I had about a month and a half to go before I retired. But what actually happened was I found that I couldn't concentrate on the work that I was doing. I did write a lot. So I thought, I'm going to contact the CEO of our company and explain it. But I felt so emotional that I thought I'll make some notes. I started making notes. I ended up writing about a page and a half, 11-point font, and I thought I'd just send it in writing. And it describes my feeling, my family, what's going to happen in the world, the anticipation of, you know, anti-Semitism, and I went through all that. My company was very, very supportive. They said, look, they didn't quite understand it to be like that, but I was extrapolating and looking into the future, and that was the thing that got me on the path to actually come out here and to help.
Now, talk me through what sort of position that you feel you've been in to help challenge the narratives, because we have seen all around the world a narrative forming that is so drastically anti-Israel, flat out anti-Semitic in many cases. And if we look at TikTok, the actual anti-Semitic pro-Hamas versus pro-Israel accounts is a ratio of 15 to 1. It looks like they're winning. What sort of skills do you believe you might be able to have to help combat the situation?
Firstly, you've got to understand the politics of Israel. You've got to understand the politics of the region. You've got to know that this hate comes from Iran through their proxies, Hezbollah and Hamas and others, and that it is, if you look at even Iran, the Iran are the Persian people. 20% of the population is subjugating 80%. So you've got the Ayatollahs and you've got the RGC, which is subjugating 80% of the population. That basically feeds into not only Israel. Israel is basically the beginning of it all, but it's going to feed into Europe, South America, and everywhere. They just don't know that yet. But that's what's going to happen. You can see that. And so in terms of the narrative, you need to have a very good understanding of Israeli politics and just the region and how it works. So you've got to use facts. It's no use, just putting up Israeli flags. You've got to have facts. And people do read facts. You've got them divided into certain groups. There's the group that doesn't know what's going on, and they're just going to push that narrative. Then you've got a group that knows what's going on, but is lying, and they're pushing a particular narrative. Is understanding which group you're dealing with. The ones that are just going to do that over and over again, forget about them. But it is also to be able to write about things that people are on the fence and they can see what's going on. You are aiming at that target audience.
I mean, do you think the facts are particularly useful here? I mean, let's look what we've seen over the course of the past few days. People, despite having seen live-streamed videos of the October 7th crimes against humanity, saying, oh, it was all AI. We have the TikTok influencers reading out bin Laden's letter to America, blaming everything on the Jews, and all of this being seemingly coordinated to all come out at the exact same time. It seems to me that you have a generation of people that don't care a whit about the facts.
That's true. Now take the United States and you look at the educational system. The amount of money that goes in there from organisations in the Middle East and from very left-leaning organisations, which actually cultivates that mindset, then people just believe anything. And also if you have very young people at university, and I mean I went to my children's university and they'll have a communist organisation and this organisation. You can have whatever you want over there. But people support the easy narrative. So if you say to somebody who has this free Palestine from the river to the sea and you ask them a couple of questions about it, they've never been to Israel, they don't understand the politics, and they're just going with the flow. So it is those sort of things, if you just take the United States, that needs to be sorted out from a legislative point of view. The funders of the universities have to pull their funding. You need to look at the people that are on these committees and that are causing all that. And if you're a big business, don't employ them. Do those sort of things. Start off with that, and you can dry a lot of this sort of stuff up.
Actually, it's a good point, because you mentioned going after the employers and the businesses. Ultimately, this sort of ideology entrenched itself because their activists did the exact same thing for about 10 years first. That means they have the momentum, and they have entrenched people in all sorts of businesses, academia, and cultural institutions. Do you believe that's something that can ultimately be uprooted by people that are speaking the truth?
Look, I think it's a difficult task because they're quite ahead of the curve, but it is not an insurmountable task. There are a lot of people in the United States and other countries that are quite shocked at what's happening. Unfortunately, if you look at the majority of people say nothing. They say nothing. But if you go and speak to them, they are abhorred by what has actually happened. So it is that majority, and you look at even Nazi Germany, the majority of Germans are very cultured, great people, and the majority just went along with it. And then before you look around, you're part of the whole train that's doing that. And that's a problem.
And I want to turn back briefly to the direct volunteering stuff that you're doing in Israel. What would you say are the greatest needs that have been demanded of you, and how can people help fulfill these needs?
I would honestly say that it is to do with the farming. As much as I thought there'd be other things to do, if you have fruit and vegetables on the farm and it's going to rot, then you need to be able to help people doing that. And a lot of people may want to sit, maybe folding envelopes or doing something pretty easy. But, that's a really rewarding thing to do. And I think if you can get the fruit off the vine, and you can get all that to the supermarkets and things like that, you're helping a lot. But also look around for other things as well. There are a lot of things you can do just in, there's so many people in hotels that need company, and that, you can help as well. Just give them a kind word.
Absolutely. So the small things add up. Leon, thank you very much both for your volunteering and a lot of the work that you're doing on combating the narratives.